again, welcome to the programme. We've only got the one guest this evening, as you may have seen there over the titles, but fear not, because he's a man who gets everywhere. Talk about your box-to-box midfield player. This is your box-to-box broadcaster on the subject of football finance. Now, a few years ago, none of you, and probably not me either, would have been particularly interested in the subject of football finance, but now it dominates the whole agenda of the game, probably for the worst of reasons rather than the best of reasons. But here to explain some of it to us, and bear in mind that there are financial issues across this city in terms of football, Sheffield Wednesday and Sheffield United, the perfect guest, I think, for the middle of the summer to try and put it all into some perspective and to shine a light is Kieran Maguire, football finance expert from Liverpool University. Welcome, Kevin.
Hi, Alan.
Good to see you.
Yep.
Yeah. That introduction doesn't suffice because I prefer the one that's on your Twitter account, which calls you, or calls yourself, the Alan Partridge of football finance, which makes two of us here tonight. So there's only usually one Alan Partridge in this studio, so you're going to upstage me tonight. The two Sheffield clubs, we're going to handle it by talking about the Owls in part one and the Blades in part two and treat them as separate entities, which indeed they are because they're 3 miles apart. But I've been here and covered them long enough to know that they are completely separate entities. They're chalk and cheese. You can't compare them. They really are different, aren't they? Animals, different animals. And you come from outside the city, but you appreciate that, I know.
Yeah, and also as an outsider, one thing I always notice when I come to this city, as an away fan, you always get a good welcome. But from a financial point of view, they are at different spots. Sheffield United have come from a fairly dark place. And now, of course, they're celebrating the riches of the Premier League, and Sheffield Wednesday they're bobbling along, and there's stuff we could do with hearing. We could probably do with hearing a bit more from them themselves. I think to allay some of the fears of fans, because there's nothing worse than a void, because social media fills that void with lots of nonsense at times and speculation and things of that nature.
It sure does. One of the people who fills the void is yourself, of course. I'm not saying it's nonsense and speculation, but you do interpret what you know of the finances, and we're going to look at some of the current. We can't look at the current accounts because they're not out yet, but we can go back. But just one point to start with. I mentioned chalk and cheese, the difference. It's not just in the character and ethos of the two clubs, it's also in the way they're run. In one case, you've got one man who owns everything, lock, stock and barrel, is right across everything. And at the other one that arguably has got too many chiefs, and the two principal chiefs are at war at the moment. They've fought a high court battle for control. So they really couldn't be more different, could they?
That's right, and probably the best way to run a football club is to have a single person in charge who then delegates responsibilities within the club itself. If you've got two people squabbling, then nobody knows who to call boss, and attention is drawn away from the activities. I mean, you rightly said a few years ago, football finance, nobody ever heard of it. In an ideal world, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation, and also I'd be unemployed because from a football fan's point of view, and I'm just a football fan with a calculator, from a football fan's point of view, it should be about who are we signing. Let's take a look at the new away kit. How embarrassing is it? Have we got new flavour pie? How much have they put up the price of a pint this year in the main stand? And things of that nature. That's what we should be focusing on. But I think football owners don't realise just how much, as football fans, we invest in the club. It's not just the season ticket renewals which are coming out each March. It's not just the away trips. It's the first thing you think of as a football fan each morning is your club, and the last thing you think of before you go to bed is your club. And I know we love our wives and partners and so on, but the club still plays a huge role in our lives.
Well, you're spreading understanding, which I think is a good thing because it's become an increasingly dominant area. And also I think it's good that people understand that a benefactor, even the most generous benefactor, can't keep dipping his hands in his pocket, throw money in. All right, there's a fair number of bad owners out there, but the abuse that they get that they suffer for events on the field is out of all proportion, really, to what they put in.
That's right.
I mean, generally, I'm talking about.
Yeah, especially if we look at the Championship and the clubs in the EFL, the owners in the Championship are on average sticking in £300,000 to £400,000 a week of their own money into the club. Only 3 clubs can go up. It doesn't matter how much money you put in, it's still not going to increase the number of clubs who are going to the Premier League, and it's not going to decrease the number of clubs who are being relegated. So I think fans, their perception of what they see as an investor is somebody who's got an limitless bank account and will put money in and will take all of the advice of the fans and will cut the price of tickets as well. It can't be done. It's an equation. If you tried it with your own finances, it wouldn't work. So why try it with somebody else's?
Okay, well, one fundamental thing that has changed is that Sean Harvey, the chief executive of EFL, as it's now called, has gone. Former Leeds United chief executive, among other clubs, who presided over, I think we'd agree, some pretty dodgy owners. Certainly a lot of clubs in crisis in terms of their very existence, and a questionable TV deal as well. I know you're not a particular Sean Harvey fan, and that you're quite gleeful that he's gone.
Well, is gleeful the right word? I think his period of governance, that there's relatively few successes and an awful lot of failures. We should not be in the situation where you've got football clubs which are using food banks in order to go and make sure that their administrative staff can actually live on a week-to-week basis. That's a terrible thing for a game which is a rich game in many respects. There are too many clubs where the wages haven't been paid. We've now seen clubs falling into administration. We're looking potentially at the start of next season in League One with 2 clubs starting the season on minus 12 points, Bolton for certain, and we still don't know what's going to happen with Bolton. They didn't fulfill a fixture against QPR. When was the last time that happened? Yeah, that's all happened under Sean Harvey's watch. You mentioned the TV deals, this midweek deal of
giving away live streaming of games. You know, on nights when sometimes there are 10 games in the Championship. You know, you're trying to build attendances, not take them away. Look,
exactly.
We're going to deal with Sheffield Wednesday to start with, and you know, we all know there are plenty of bad guys in football ownership, but let's make it clear from the outset before we get into the nitty-gritty about Sheffield Wednesday. I think that fans, the majority, would accept we've got one of the good guys here in terms of his heart and his commitment being in the right place, certainly his money. He's financed Sheffield Wednesday to the tune of many millions of pounds, and clearly is intent on continuing to do that in trying to get the club to succeed. So Dapon Shansiri is a good guy in that respect. We're looking though at that enthusiasm and that commitment going to a level where there's a problem. The accounts are long overdue. How do you see that situation? How do you see it resolving itself, and how soon?
Well, I can only. The reason why the accounts haven't been submitted hasn't been made clear. Should fans care? Yes and no. Ultimately, it's accounting who does give a damn about it. But the problem is as a consequence of those accounts not being produced, it does appear that we've got this soft embargo from the EFL. So therefore, it now impacts upon Steve Bruce's ability to recruit. It impacts upon the fans because they don't know what's happening. And I think I think they deserve better. They deserve communication. Has Mr. Chansiri spent money? Certainly. Has he spent it well? Well, who's advising him? I don't think he's making decisions himself in terms of recruitment, but he must be employing people who are providing him with advice. Are they making the right decisions? Is that in the best medium to long-term interests of the club? We don't know. I mean, as an outsider, I've seen the Sheffield Wednesday wage bill shoot up in 2017. Has what's happened the following season? We don't know. How's this going to impact upon recruitment in terms of financial fair play and all that nonsense? So I think we need a few answers, and if they submit the accounts to the FL and if they send them off to Companies House, then problem resolved.
Yeah.
So what's stopping? Have they fallen out with the auditors? Are there things which he doesn't want the fans to know about? give fans a bit of credit. They're not going to be sticking up the pitchforks. He has stuck his money where his mouth is. So just give the fans a chance to absorb the information and make informed decisions.
Well, my soundings, and I'm sure I speak for other journalists as well, are that there isn't a problem. It will be resolved, and very soon. You're talking about a ticking clock and a manager who's anxious to get on with it, but in the background he clearly is recruiting, if not registering players.
Yeah, and that's good. I mean, there is work that you can do behind the scenes. I think there's also some negatives, because if you're a Premier League club and you're thinking, well, we're going to have 3 or 4 of our young lads going out on loan this season to the Championship. So I'm a Brighton fan. We've got a young defender called Ben White. Now, 2 years ago he was at Newport. Last year he was at Peterborough. This year we're looking to place him in a Championship club. Could we use Sheffield Wednesday? We're not certain. So he's ended up going to Leeds. Now, he'd have been a fantastic player, fantastic recruitment. We've got a fantastic goalkeeper. Where's he going to end up this season? If our new manager's got a choice of 4 or 5, one of whom is Sheffield Wednesday and the others are Borough, Forest, Derby and Leeds and so on, other traditional big Northern to Midlands clubs, Sheffield Wednesday aren't going to be given the same opportunities because we've got this soft embargo. So from Steve Bruce's point of view, yes, he is able to do some things behind the scenes, certainly with players who are available on a Bosman and things of that nature. That's less of a problem, but I think they're losing out on the loan market, and if there's fewer loan opportunities, it means you've got to pay fees for players who are coming in, which means that instead of spending £6 million on a centre forward, you've got to spend £2 million on a centre half and £2 million on a right back and then £2 million on a centre forward, and that affects the overall quality. Okay,
there needs to be some certainty soon for the sake of the season to come, even though there appears not to be any level of panic behind the scenes. And look, let me ask you this first of all, whether you call it financial fair play or profitability and sustainability, it doesn't work, does it? I mean, Aston Villa have got round it with a ground sale manoeuvre. Derby County have done the same. It would appear that Sheffield Wednesday are doing the same thing. I mean, it clearly is shot to pieces, isn't it? I mean, this attempt, supposed attempt by the EFL to control spending, not working?
I think it has. It's really been blown up over the course of the last year or two. There used to be some pretty strict rules. The EFL then tried to copy the rules from the Premier League, and the Premier League doesn't need strict rules for financial fair play because it earns so much money, they don't have to worry about losing it. And when they copied the rules from the Premier League, there were some weaknesses, there were loopholes. I'm not going to criticise Derby or Aston Villa or even Sheffield Wednesday. And we don't know what Sheffield Wednesday have done or whether they haven't. It doesn't matter. If the rules allow you to do this thing and to sell the stadium to yourself, which is a crazy thing to do, and to make a £41 million profit on doing so, it's a bit like me selling my calculator to myself and saying for £100 now saying, hey, I've just made £100 profit. It's a nonsense from a head scratching point of view, but the world of accounting, the dark arts there allow you to get away with things.
And also the late submission of accounts. Is there anything? There's nothing illegal, as I understand it, in that, or is there? Technically,
it's a bit like parking on a double yellow line. You shouldn't do it. You'll get a small fine. The fine's £1,500. So it's nothing significant. And as far as the tax authorities are concerned, Sheffield Wednesday don't make profit, so therefore the tax authorities aren't bothered either, in particular, so long as Sheffield Wednesday are paying the PAYE and NI each month on the players' wages, they're perfectly happy.
Right. We're going to look at a sequence of graphics in a moment. Just before I do, you've got a benefactor here, an individual who, for his own excitement and whatever, is trying very hard to lift a major football club back to where it feels it belongs, which it probably does in terms of its size and tradition. Those fans who occasionally contact me and say, wow, if he ever loses interest, where is that going to leave us? Do you see that they've got a genuine fear there? How do you see that? Is it healthy? What?
Well, Mr. Chansiri, he's invested money in the club and he's lent money to the club. Now, if he throws his toys out of the pram and he demands that money back immediately, we've got a problem because the club doesn't have the cash to do so. Is he going to do that?
That's the thing, isn't it?
No, he's not. It's not in his interests. It's not in the club's interests. I'm sure he wants to leave a legacy in Sheffield of his achievements here and his ownership period here. So I think it's very remote. And we have seen with other clubs, Aston Villa 12 months ago, Aston Villa were within an hour of going out of business. Things were that bad. I think fans really had no idea as to the extent of the problems. And then two billionaires appeared from nowhere, and look, they're now in the Premier League. So should fans be worried? No, I think his heart's in the right place, and if he decides he can take the club no further, or that he has lost interest, it is Sheffield Wednesday we're talking about. It's not some tin pot organisation.
It wouldn't be so difficult. It wouldn't be hard to find a buyer at maybe the figure that he would want, bearing in mind that all the money that he has sunk into it. That perhaps is a genuine concern.
Yeah.
But he appears to want the best thing for the club going forward, which is, you concur with that as a numbers man. Let's just have a quick look at a few graphics. I mean, it's difficult to be precise about these because, for instance, we're talking operating loss here. We can only go as far as 2017 because the current accounts aren't there. Now, at that stage, of course, profitability and sustainability, you have to have a loss of £39 million. The limit is £39 million across 3 seasons before this supposed transfer embargo, whatever comes in, or sanctions come in, and they're just under it there, aren't they? As of 2017, they're just under it. Yep.
I think the issue is if you take a look at those numbers in 2015, which will drop out, of course, first of all.
Yeah.
Sheffield Wednesday have been run pretty tight ship. The losses have increased since then, and the reason why that is that the owner's come in and he's invested in wages and he's invested in transfer signings. Sheffield Wednesday don't make any money on the transfers going out.
We're going to have a look at that in a minute.
Right.
That's a really key point, and I think it is at the root of why they're in this situation now. Just before we do, a chart showing player costs again going back to sort of 2016-17, and there you have it rising to almost £30 million, and that's quite a steep rise, as you say, from the figures of just a few years before. I think that one speaks for itself. Let's have a move on with Kieran Maguire here, football finance expert from Liverpool University. Let's have a move on to spending per income. As per 2016-17, it was £1.91 for every £1 received. I think I'm right in saying that, Kieran.
That's right, yeah. And most of that was going out in terms of players. So
overspending almost by twice what you're receiving.
That's right. Now, in any other line of business, you go out of business, but football is unique. Because you do have these owners, and they don't view football clubs as businesses. They view them as trophies, as trophy assets. So you might invest money in a fantastic painting or a yacht, and you're prepared to lose money on it. And the owners are prepared to lose money on the football clubs because there is this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and that pot of gold is progressing to the Premier League.
Which, to be fair to Mr. Shansiri, in two back-to-back seasons of heavy investment, he very nearly achieved. But it was because of what we're going to see on the next graph that the problems then subsequently followed. So let's have a look at this. This is the big one for me, and you've already alluded it to. It's player trading. There we are. Acquisitions are in blue. And sales are almost invisible in the dark colour. I think it's black, or am I going colourblind at the bottom? But it's the minuscule blocks at the bottom there. Just explain that one, the difference between the blue and the brown, to start with, Kieran.
Well, what we've seen in the last 2 seasons, in 2016 and 2017, is the chairman, the owner, has backed the manager in the transfer market and has given them eight-figure sums, 8-figure budgets to go out and sign players. What often happens at the same time is that they will have received offers for Estieri and players and Barry Bannon and players who are some of the better players in the squad, and they've turned them down. Now, from a manager's point of view, that's absolutely fantastic. But the problem is that if you don't get promoted, then you're effectively losing this money, and then you're under pressure.
Catches up.
And the danger that they could face is that if they are very close to the FFP limits, other clubs, they're not dumb, they're aware of this, and if they're bidding, they've got a player worth 6 million, you bid 3, because you know you're in a fire sale situation, and you don't want. And whilst
10 seconds to the break.
Right.
Yeah, I think you made your point brilliantly. And that's Sheffield Wednesday. We'll allude again to the Owls in part 2, but also more specifically on Sheffield United. Do rejoin us then.